What's up, Wonders of London fans? It's me, Vincent from Wonders of London, and today I'm taking you to Hampstead Heath right here on YouTube, and we're going to take a walk through Hampstead Heath, a wonderfully large and beautiful green space. One of the entrances is on North End Road in the London borough of Camden. However, it's quite a fascinating and complex little place because it's such a big green area that it covers quite a few different boroughs, but it's also managed by a different sort of place. But just to give you an idea of another little borough that this place covers, it is also in the London borough of Barnet. And there you have it. Welcome to Barnet. Now, the reason we've come to North End Way, rather, is to take this entrance to Hampstead Heath via the Golders Hill Park. And we can see over there, welcome to Golders Hill Park, part of Hampstead Heath, and it's designed by visionary landscape architects Capability Brown, Humphrey Repton and Robert Marnock. And in fact, it is managed, Hampstead Heath in its entirety is a charity, and it is managed by the City of London, or the Corporation of the City of London. Here you have some of the opening times throughout the year from January to December. As you can see, from November the 14th to December the 31st, it closes at 4:30 p.m. But April 11 to May 1, it's open until 8:30, and May 2 to August 14 until 9 p.m. So those are the times you can come and visit. We are here in the autumn because of all the wonderful colours of autumn. You've got so many trees in here. One thing I always like to tell people is London, this is in North London of course, London is in fact an urban forest with millions of trees to enjoy and see. And what better time to look at the trees and enjoy the trees than autumn. Look at these beautiful colours of autumn. If you do come to Golders Hill Park as well, one of the important things is that there is a cafe, the Golders Hill Cafe. And the most important thing, I reckon, is that behind the Golders Hill Cafe, you in fact have a toilet, two toilets on either side, the gents' toilet and the ladies' toilet, as you can see with the sign over here. Before we go any further, it's important to note that Hampstead Heath is around 800 acres big. And this section is just the Golders Hill Park. And one thing we're going to see in Golders Hill Park is the zoo and the deer enclosure. But as I mentioned, the entire heath itself, so this is the Golders Hill Park. We have all of this, the entire heath is about 800 acres. So it is quite a big and expansive green space in London. And it's a protected place as a charity as well. And that is simply phenomenal. Now, we don't actually have a tour here, but I wanted to show you this place because it is so amazing. It's one of the hidden gems of London. Even though it's so big, not many people know about Golders Hill Park and Hampstead Heath. And of course, it's much too big to do a tour. You could do a tour, but we thought it was much too big to do a tour. But we still wanted to share it with you guys because London is so fantastic. And there are so many phenomenal things in London. So welcome to the Golders Hill Park inside Hampstead Heath. Let's go for a walk. We're going to end at Kenwood House, one of the most important and historic houses in London. But we're starting on this side, the other end of Golders Hill Park, the other end of Hampstead Heath. And I love the walkways, as you can see, lots of green, but also all of the colours of autumn, the auburns, the reds, the oranges, the golds, the yellows, and of course the green is still growing strong, and it is simply phenomenal. They did studies where they say if you can, of course not everyone is always able to, but if you are able to, try to spend at least an hour a day in nature. Now, of course, not everyone can spend an hour a day in nature, so do as much as you are able to walk through green spaces, through natural spaces, because it is in fact good for your mental health. Of course, you get so much peace and so many moments to reflect right here. You've got a diversity of spiders, London refuge for hedgehogs, moths, and new species still being discovered right here. So it is one of London's wild spaces. Got this lovely little rose garden in the Golders Hill Park as well. So nice to see it in the heart of autumn. So peaceful and relaxing just to walk through. You've got lots of benches. You can come and sit, read a book, grab a coffee from the cafe, not too far from the cafe, and you can come and sit and just enjoy nature in all of its glory. Got these lovely walkways as well. Simply gorgeous. We've got this wonderful sculpture up over there. Very glorious. What is everyone's favourite season, as I'm always asking? Mine, of course, is autumn. And as Albert Camus famously said, autumn is a second spring when all the leaves are flowers. There's no better place to enjoy autumn than Golders Green. We're going to check out a lot of wonderful things. We've got views of London from Golders Green, lots of poetry in Golders Green, lots of bodies of water. In fact, there are places where you can go swimming in the Heath. Now, one thing I am really sad about is this spot here hasn't been open since the lockdowns. He used to have the butterfly house, but it has been closed for a very long time. So unfortunately, no butterfly house. But there is so much more to discover and enjoy and marvel at here in Golders Hill Park, Hampstead Heath. Now, Golders Hill Park, this section of the Heath is very child friendly. In fact, most of the Heath is quite child friendly, but it's also quite educational because you have a lot of signs telling you about nature and the plants and the trees and everything. So it is quite great to bring young people, children, to come and learn more about the wonderful world of nature, especially in London, where when you're in the centre there are lots of parks. There are more than 3,000 parks and green spaces in London, but sometimes it feels like a concrete jungle where you can't find these wondrous green spaces, but they are there. They're sometimes kind of hidden, but a place like Golders Hill Park just gives you an entire day, especially if you go into the Heath, just to walk around and explore and enjoy. And this is the Golders Hill Park Stumpery, a habitat for wildlife and an interesting aesthetic, as you saw as we walked through, for animals and just to see in Golders Hill Park. And then when we come out over here, we're not too far from the zoo. Here we are at the Golders Hill Park Zoo, which is quite lovely. It is a cloudy day, rainy day, later on perhaps. You've got lots of different animals, a lot of our birds and fowl, like the speckled pigeon, Columba Guinea, got the laughing kookaburra. Lots of interesting bits of information for everyone, not just for young people. As we walk around, got what looks like chickens over there. Pretty cool. Oh, there's a chicken and another bird. The zoo is in fact a proud member of Biaza, the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and they inspire people to help conserve the natural world, participate in effective cooperative conservation programs, and deliver the highest quality of environmental education, along with several other things. Yes, we did have chickens. And the chickens have names, as you can see over here. And over there we have a ring-tailed lemur. Just chilling, hanging out there. According to this, ring-tailed lemurs can live about 30 years. So cool. Once again, the lemurs, 3 of them, have names as well. Now over there we have a couple of the donkeys. Just feeding over there. So cool. So I have 3 wallabies right there. 4 wallabies in fact, which are very cool. Now I've just zoomed out to show you that a group of wallabies is called a mob, as you can see over there. And most wallaby species breed all year round, but Bennett's wallaby breed seasonally. So we've got the Bennett's wallabies over here. And they get to live about 15 years, which is quite fantastic. So there are the little wallabies. This wallaby is a bit closer, so cool. It's the only place I've ever actually seen wallabies anywhere in the world. And it ran off. As well as the zoo, like in the Stumpery, we have so many wonderful tree stumps being reclaimed by nature here in Traitors Hill Park. Over there we have another wallaby. And a squirrel. 2 squirrels over there. One's hidden in the brush. Now another cool thing about Traitors Hill Park are the deer. You can see them there, peeking through the leaves. Let's just walk a bit this way. You can see little deer. Oh, they're all looking at me. Here we have some more deer. They're all in the shade today. So cool. So you do have the deer enclosure as well as the zoo. Now as we come up over here, be coming back out just by the zoo. I must say I'm not the biggest fan of zoos personally, but I do understand the need for them in our modern day and age. But here we start getting some views of London. Here through the fence we can see a pheasant, beautiful creature. Now that particular pheasant is called Lady Amherst's pheasant, as you can see over here. And if you look in the distance beyond the trees there, you can see a bit of the built-up city around nature. I'm just absolutely adoring the autumnal colours here in Traitors Hill Park, Hampstead Heath. Now Traitors Hill Park has quite a few phenomenal trees, like this one over here, simply majestic. Do let us know which is your favourite tree. And we got this one over here. But one of the amazing things is that wind vane that you see over there on top of this structure. And this wind vane was actually put in place and unveiled for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee, as you can see over there. May she rest in peace. but it is quite nice to see. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're technically in Camden and Barnet. So we've got the worshipful mayor of the London Borough of Barnet over there. There's still a lot more of Golders Hill Park to explore, but as I mentioned, the Heath, as it's known locally, is over about 800 acres, so we'll never be able to see all of it. But let's go to the Hill Garden Pergola. I love leaving Golders Hill Park and entering the Heath proper this way. So you have these two guardian trees, I like to call them. Amazing. And as we go this way, we will, in a few moments, enter Hampstead Heath proper. We're already in Hampstead Heath, but this is the Golders Hill section. Now, Golders Hill Park, that is. As you can probably hear, I am on a hill. It is, of course, Golders Hill Park, but welcome to Hampstead Heath proper. Here we go, some stairs as we make our way to the Pergola, or Pergola. Now you've got these lovely benches here, and you can come and relax and sit on to enjoy. But we are going this way. Look at all this wonderful nature and the lovely paths to walk through. Now, you've got quite a few celebrities living here over the centuries, including the famous author C.S. Lewis, and he lived near Hampstead Heath, and the Heath reportedly served as one of his inspirations for the fantasy of the Chronicles of Narnia. There isn't, unfortunately, any documentation to back up this claim, as with so many places that allegedly inspired the likes of C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, etc. But it is quite fantastic, and it's part of the local lore. So the lore and the urban myths of the area, and people in the area love to say this place inspired C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. And I can just imagine Aslan prowling through the Heath over here, and it is quite fantastic. But not only that, the Heath is where Constable, the famous painter, spent quite a while painting towards the end of his life. So the wonderful, amazing painter John Constable spent quite a bit of his life painting here in Hampstead Heath, and we can see why. It is just phenomenal. It's a painter's delight, especially in autumn. I wish I could paint, but I myself am not a painter. But we have arrived at the Hampstead Heath Hill Garden and Pergola. We are now here, and of course there's the map once again of Hampstead Heath. We're going to finish right here by Kenwood House Estate. Here's a bit of the information of the hill and pergola. Do feel free to make a screenshot if you would like to. There's the other bit. And here are the opening times of the Hill Garden and Pergola. Now this is truly one of the hidden delights of Hampstead Heath. And it's the work of William H. Lever, who would later become Lord Leverhulme. Some of you may recognise the name Lever, L-E-V-E-R. He was, of course, one of the famous Lever brothers, and he founded the company that is now known as Unilever. And this was one of the things he decided to do. In 1904, Lord Leverhulme purchased the hill, a substantial house facing North End Way, where we came in, the Pergola, while we came in the Heath and Golders Hill Park. And he subsequently acquired the adjoining land, and he had the opportunity to create the Pergola, which is a magnificent Edwardian extravagance, which would be the setting for garden parties and so many other things, but also a great place for walking and exploring and discovering nature. As we can see here, very beautiful autumn colours and plants and leaves. I'm going downhill now, so trying to slow down a bit. How gorgeous is this? A truly hidden gem of London. It's a great place for photo opportunities as well. Simply majestic, peaceful. As you can see, no one is here. It's just me and the heath and the hill garden, which is fantastic. You can come up over here to this open green. Have any of you been to Hampstead Heath? Or do you have a favourite park or green space of London? Now, masterminding the work to build this place was Thomas Mawson, a world famous authority on civic design. And he was considered the appropriate person to build and work on this part of the heath. And it is wonderful. Look at these views. We're going to go up there to check out the Pergola. But before we do, have a look at this. Simply amazing. Look at these gorgeous reflections. This place always takes my breath away. So I did take a seat on the bench there. Need to do some exercise, but have a look at the wonderful bench. I was just sitting on such a lovely place to relax, read, enjoy a book, etc. Then we have the gorgeous colours of autumn here. But let's go into the Pergola. I love it. Got so many wonderful photo opportunities. If any of you want great selfies, great photos, Hampstead Heath and the Pergola is the place for you, as you will see in a few moments. Now, I'd love to do a live here, but I have tried doing lives here, and unfortunately no signal, which I think is one of the great things, because you must enjoy this place without any distractions. I'm lucky enough to live in London, not too far from here, so I have had ample opportunities to enjoy this place and share it with you guys. But look at that. So gorgeous. And I love coming up here because you can see trees as far as the eye can see, and all the colours of nature. Simply majestic. You'd almost forget that you're in a city of some 9 million beings, people. Brilliant. As we come up here, we've got all these wonderful views. If you love nature, as I do, you must come to Hampstead Heath and the Pergola and go for a wander. Now, from the Pergola, one of the amazing things, we can see quite a lot of the heath, As I mentioned, it's about 800 acres. No way we're going to be able to do 800 acres today. But from this little walk that I'm just doing now, we will be able to see wonderful expanses of the heath, but also some of the wonderful buildings surrounding it and brilliant views. Later on, as we walk towards Kenwood House, we will get to see some wonderful views of London and the city. But first, let's enjoy this. I'm always lacking words when I come here. Imagine getting to live here. Do have some private residences in the area. Which are lovely. Got a wee little cat. Hello kitty cat. Not going to get too close. Just lovely to see a cat chilling. Cats are cool. What's everyone's favourite animal? Favourite pet? I love cats. Independent. Look at that. Imagine if there was a blue sky. Of course, it is London in the autumn. So we do have rain, but I love walking through these avenues. I feel like I'm in a movie. And of course, if you want to see a bit more of the Heath, they did make a wonderful movie of the Heath. And I'll tell you a bit more about that later on as we walk through. It was quite a fascinating story of a man who basically set up a tent of sorts in the Heath and kind of squatted here. Onwards, ever onwards. And I do love the mixture of man-made items and nature, these wonderful views. And you must visit once a season if you're able to, of course, because you get so many different views from here. Look at that, barely a soul. I've only come across about 5-10 people since I've started making this video. Truly a relaxing and peaceful place to walk around. And we've arrived at this end, so we're going to go down this spiral staircase if it's open. But before we do, let's have a look at this magnificent view. And there are 800 acres of this, guys. It is wondrous. And we've got this lovely spiral staircase. I do like going down spiral staircases. A bit of water. In autumn, be sure to come with the right footwear. Well, generally any time, because it can rain any time of year in London. Now this is pretty cool because every time I come here this bit is closed, so I've never actually been down this bit at the right time. So this is a discovery for me as well. There's always something new in London. Such an amazing place. There's always something to discover, and it's ever changing. So you'll never run out of things to do in wonderful London. But that's it, guys, that's the Pergola. Let's walk through a bit more of the Heath. And here we go back out into the wonderful Heath. Now we're about to leave the Pergola. There are so many more things to explore and discover, and just wonderful places to relax, as I've been saying quite continuously. But that was the Hampstead Heath Hill and Pergola. Now remember, we're going up here to Kenwood House. Now one thing I love about the area are the street signs like Heath Brow that we have over there. Very unique design of street roads, and I'll show you a couple more as we continue. But the reason I've come this way to Heath Brow is because of this building, a castle that's not really a castle. This is none other than Jack Straw's castle. Now first I got to cross over to show you the entire building, and once I've crossed over you actually have this monument which was set up to remember the men and women of Hampstead who gave their lives in the two great wars. And in fact, the sign at the base there actually says the Borough of Hampstead, because Hampstead used to be its own borough. It no longer is, however. But on the other side we have Jack Straw's castle, which was actually a pub, but now is apparently used as apartments. So it does look like offices at the moment for Group Nexus, who do parking lots. There is also a parking lot next to Jack Straw's castle. But there is a noble story behind Jack Straw's castle. During the Peasants' Revolt around 1381, Jack Straw spoke to a group of people of Hampstead Heath from the top of a hay wagon, which was later dubbed Jack Straw's Castle. Later in June that year, Straw would lead the Essex detachment through Aldgate, which is quite an interesting little thing. Now we're going to continue up over that way, and I'll stop here just to get to that side to show you one of the many ponds. There are more than 30 ponds in the Heath. And over there in front of us is one of the ponds in the Heath. Of course, you've got many sort of roads going through parts of the Heath, so people can drive by, and of course there is parking, but there are also residences in the area, which are some of the things that make the Heath so amazing. We've got a breeze right now, so you don't get the usual wonderful reflections that you get when it's a calmer day. They're simply majestic here. And there's a little bit of Jack Straw's castle. Lots of benches here to sit and enjoy the day. Wonderful flag there. As I mentioned earlier, I just love the street signs here. We're on Whitestone Walk on the other side of Jack Straw's castle, and we're just going to cross over this way, over the zebra crossing, to check out another street sign. We are of course in North London, NW3, so you can see Jack Straw's castle a bit more to the left over there. And up over here got another lovely street sign with something called the Vale of Health, which we won't quite visit today, but if you do want a place to go and enjoy teas or coffees or meals, we've got the Hampstead Village, the Spaniards, but we are on the way to Kenwood House, and we're gonna sort of re-enter the wild area of the Heath over here by Spaniards Road. this bus stop, because there are buses that bring you here, is Jack Straw's Castle, Whitestone Pond. And the bus that will bring you right here is the 210, either from Finsbury Park or Brent Cross and Brent Cross Shopping Centre. And we're going to go back into the Heath proper, just up over there. And I love re-entering over here because of this City of London coat of arms, the wondrous dragons of the city there, or the Corporation of London. Now from here we get another glimpse of the city from Hampstead Heath, but I'm going to take you to Parliament Hill, where we get one of the best views of London. Down that way we can see Greenwich, so we're looking south east. Well, that's Canary Wharf actually, not quite Greenwich, but quite lovely there. Now, for over 200 years, Hampstead Heath has been a place of pleasure. However, it has its dark history, and it is much older than 200 years. And one of the history of it, one of the darker parts of its history rather, are the highwaymen who used to frequent the area. The Hampstead area was very popular with highwaymen. Highwaymen were kind of criminals, outlaws of a sort, and they would rob people on the highways. And for centuries, they preyed on wealthy Londoners and wealthy travellers rather on their way to London. When they were caught, they were usually strung up on trees right here in Hampstead Heath. So they'd be hung and strung up on the trees in this area. You actually had a local highwayman, very famous and apparently dashing individual called Claude Duval, who was so famously polite and popular, he was mourned following his execution. So he was executed and the public cried for him in and around 1669. The life of a highwayman was a very short one. Claude Duval, for example, was executed at the tender age of 27. And on the high ground, west of North End Way, where we started, you had the highwayman Francis Jackson hung there in 1674 for the robbery and murder of a man called Henry Miller. And the gallows stood between his body. The gallows stood between two trees known as the gibbet elms. And his body was hung there in chains, which was quite a terrible way to go. And perhaps the most famous, or second most famous after Claude Duval, highwayman, some people would argue that he was the most famous highwayman, is none other than Dick Turpin. Now, to the left is the road we saw earlier, Spaniards Road, which will lead you to the Spaniards Inn. And it is said that Dick Turpin was born, according to legend, at the Spaniards Inn in 1705, and he used the pub as a hideout to plan his highway robberies. And he would cry, "Stand and deliver," which is one of the famous cries of the highwaymen. Another famous cry of the highwaymen was, "Your money or your life." The story of Dick Turpin and his horse Black Bess was heavily romanticised after he was hanged in York around 1739 for a lifetime of crimes including murder, horse and sheep theft, and a series of highway robberies. Now, one of the most famous stories or legends surrounding Dick Turpin is he once went to a pub and he found that the landlord was being accosted by the taxman rather, and the taxman wanted the landlord to pay taxes, but the landlord of this pub had no money to pay the taxes. So Dick Turpin offered to pay the taxes for the landlord, and he actually gave the taxman a tip. Now, after the taxman had left, Dick Turpin put on his mask, went round to catch up to the taxman, and then proceeded to rob the taxman of his money, of the money that Dick Turpin had paid the taxman, and quite a bizarre story, and the tip that he'd given the taxman as well. And then he also robbed the taxman of the other taxes he had, according to legend, or one version of the legend, of course, and then he shared that money with the landlord of the pub. And this is, of course, where we get the romanticised idea of highwaymen, particularly with the stories of Claude Duval and Dick Turpin. However, more realistically, the highwaymen, who were also known as gentlemen robbers, could be quite violent. And a lot of the highwaymen had previously, before the English Civil War in the 1640s, they had previously been wealthy individuals, and they had supported, a lot of them, the royalists, the royal family, Charles I. But of course their side lost in the English Civil War, and their properties and assets and money were seized, and they saw no recourse but to become highwaymen, criminals, outlaws. And a lot of them were quite bitter when they became highwaymen, that they would in fact be very, very cruel as highwaymen. For example, the murder of Lord Fairfax was a notorious case, but you did have hangings of highwaymen here in Hampstead Heath. Now, perhaps one of the most macabre and disturbing and bizarre stories about the Heath is that of a crucifixion that happened in Hampstead Heath. Now, earlier I did mention that, love the leaves by the way, apologies, gorgeous to see the leaves falling from the trees, but earlier I did mention that the park has a lot of history, so you might imagine that the crucifixion was something that happened in Roman London, Roman Britain, when the Romans invaded 2,000 years ago. But if you thought that, like I did when I was researching the area, and I saw the title, Crucifixion, you may have been, you would be forgiven to think that it was something that happened almost 2,000 years ago, but no. It happened in 1968, and it's a very hotly contested story as to why it happened, but basically involved an interior decorator of sorts convincing 3 of his friends to crucify him in Hampstead Heath to make the world a better place. Now this man did survive, and his 3 friends were actually tried at courts, and part of the story says that when they were tried, they were not allowed to use in their defense the story, the fact that their friend had asked them to crucify him here in Hampstead Heath. So they were tried for causing grievous bodily harm, because the man did survive despite being crucified here in Hampstead Heath. And it's such an interesting thing to consider. This happened not in Roman London, but just in 1968. And there are so many phenomenal, interesting, sad as well, things about London. But there's one of the most bizarre stories from Hampstead Heath. Now we're slowly approaching Parliament Hill, and here we get our first glimpse of London again. Well, first Parliament Hill glimpse of London. And before we get to Parliament Hill, just have a look at this. The city is slowly revealing itself from beyond the trees of the Heath. And this was just amazing. Listen to the mighty power of the wind. Hopefully you can hear it. Just a few moments ago it was blowing all the leaves. Love autumn, as you can see. Lots of dog walkers in the park, as you can probably hear. And we have arrived at Parliament Hill. See kite flyers over there, and we are in a few moments going to get a wonderful view of London from here on Parliament Hill. And there you have it, gorgeous view of London. Do any of you know a nickname that Parliament Hill used to have, or a different name? It actually used to have a different name. Well, here's a clue to what that name might have been. Do any of you recognise this? Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Well, that is of course Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators. They plotted to blow up the Houses of Parliament when King James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland, was in Parliament. And of course that plot was stopped before it could happen. However, legend has it that they planned to watch the blowing up of Parliament from here on Parliament Hill in Hampstead Heath. And as such, it was actually named for almost 100 years. Parliament Hill was called Traitors Hill. Now, of course, that's a legend once again. There's not much evidence to suggest or to prove that they did plan to watch the blowing up of Parliament from here, but it is quite interesting. And of course, another reason this place is very popular with this view is because it has one of the most amazing views of the fireworks. Now, you're not allowed fireworks in the Heath, but you can come here and see the fireworks from the Heath in London. And a lot of people come to see the Bonfire Night fireworks, which happen on the 5th of November, which of course is when Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators plotted to kill the king. But also you have the New Year's Eve fireworks, great view from here on Hampstead Heath. Simply gorgeous. Now off to Kenwood House. Now before we get to Kenwood House, there are a few amazing things that you must check out in Hampstead Heath. Some of the things that the Heath is very famous for, tricky climb, and one of them is this over here, the model boating pond. So we have the model boating pond over here, which is quite lovely. And to the right of the model boating pond, behind these trees, you have the men's bathing pond. And also, there's also the women's bathing pond on the other end as well, where you can actually go bathing in the ponds of Hampstead Heath. So there's the men's bathing pond. How lovely is that? And the model boating pond once again. I forgot to say this earlier, but when I said bathing, I meant swimming. Of course, they're called bathing ponds, but you don't come to wash here. You just come to swim or bathe, as it were. So please don't come and wash in the Hampstead Heath. You can get clean after going in the water, but yeah, it is bathing as in swimming. Now, here's a bit of strange London weather for you. It's raining, but the sun is also shining. So, quite interesting. Now, earlier I told you about a movie. If you want to see a bit more of Hampstead Heath, they actually made a wonderful movie about a man. The movie is actually called Hampstead, by the way, if you do want to check it out. And they actually made a wonderful movie about a man who was squatting in Hampstead Heath. And it stars Brendan Gleeson and Diane Keaton. And it's a very lovely movie. Diane Keaton is a woman who lives in some of the houses around Hampstead Heath, and she spies the character of Brendan Gleeson squatting here in the Heath. And they develop a friendship, especially after some property developers claim that the character of Brendan Gleeson is living here illegally. And then there's a whole court battle and stuff, and their friendship grows stronger and stronger. And it is quite a lovely little story. So do check out that movie, beautiful movie. I do love it personally. It is called Hampstead. But that was just to lead you into Kenwood houses and the grounds of Kenwood. Kenwood House is one of London's finest country houses. It is a masterpiece by Robert Adam, who remodelled its facades and interiors in the 1760s for the first Earl of Mansfield. The grounds were redesigned in the 1790s by Humphrey Repton, who created the magnificent vistas towards the city. In 1929, Kenwood was given to the nation, together with an internationally important collection of paintings, and I will tell you about one of these paintings very soon. But here are the opening and closing times. Now, in the distance there, beyond the trees, once again, you can see Kenwood House. But before we go right up to Kenwood House, I wanted to show you one of my favourite little parts of Hampstead Heath, And it is that bridge over there. Finally, the wind is a bit calmer, or at least over here by this lake, the wind is a bit calmer. And look at the reflection of the bridge there. How lovely is that? Now, the reason I love that bridge, I say bridge, but the reason I love it is because it's not actually a bridge. It's a fake bridge. Look at this. This is the other side of the bridge. It's not a real bridge, it's just a sort of facade of the bridge to show you, to make it look like a bridge from the other side towards Kenwood there. But when you're here, you find it's not in fact a bridge, which I think is pretty cool. I remember I was trying to find this first time I came to Kenwood. I was like, how do I walk over the bridge? Because you get such wonderful photos. But yeah, it's not in fact a bridge. And there we have it. Kenwood House in the distance. Very beautiful mansion. It's open to the public, as I mentioned earlier, so you can actually visit it. They usually have exhibitions in there, and they do a lot of concerts throughout the year, but usually in the summer, of course. Summer is concert season, so you can come here, enjoy music, concerts, live music, bands, etc. But also at Christmas they have one of London's best Christmas light shows, and it is simply majestic. So be sure, if you're in London for Christmas, to put Kenwood House. Their Christmas display, it's usually amazing, but be sure to put it on your list. And of course there are so many amazing Christmas displays around London. I don't think anyone can see all of the Christmas displays there are around London. It's one of the things that London does greatly. Christmas. But yeah, that is Kenwood House. Would you not just love to live here? It is gorgeous. And of course, when it was built, this was not part of London. It is part of London today, but this would have been the countryside. So technically, this is in fact a country house. But today, it is in London. It is in one of the London boroughs, or boroughs of London. And it is magnificent. As you slowly get up closer and closer to the wonderful Kenwood House. Now, perhaps one of the most famous and important residents of Kenwood House would be none other than Elizabeth Dido Belle, who has a very interesting and phenomenal story. Elizabeth Dido Belle was raised as part of an aristocratic family in Georgian Britain. She was actually the illegitimate daughter of a Royal Naval officer named Sir John Lindsay and a woman called Maria Belle. Now, this woman, Maria Belle, was actually a black woman, and it's believed that she might have been a slave before meeting Sir John Lindsay. And in fact, they had this illegitimate daughter, and this illegitimate daughter, Dido, would actually be raised right here at Kenwood House in Hampstead, which is simply phenomenal considering those times, the 1700s. As I mentioned, she was born around the year 1761 and died around 1804, before the abolishment of slavery and the emancipation of the slaves in the British colonies. Dido spent much of her life here on Hampstead Heath in Kenwood House, and she actually lived with her great uncle William Murray, who was the first Earl of Mansfield and the Lord Chief Justice. And in fact, as Lord Chief Justice, he presided and ruled over a number of cases that examined the legality of slavery, and some of the rulings he would make would lead to the abolishment of slavery, the emancipation of the slaves in the British colonies first, and eventually the abolishment of slavery. And one of the phenomenal things about Elizabeth Dido Belle is we often think of black people, mixed race people like she was, being half black, half white. We often think they lived poor lives in these days, or they would have been slaves or something connected to slavery. But she was actually a member of the upper classes, a very distinguished and sophisticated lady who lived right here with her own sort of inheritance at Kenwood House. We can see the back of Kenwood House right now, And while she lived in Kenwood House, she was considered an equal, and we can see this in one of the most famous paintings of Elizabeth Dido Belle, where she is painted with one of her cousins, a white lady, but they're on an equal footing. And it is just an amazing thing to see and learn and discover about history, Georgian history in England, but also British history and so many other things. As I mentioned, you can visit Kenwood House and find out more about what I just told you and so much more. But this is where we end the walk, guys, in the gardens of Kenwood House in Hampstead Heath. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. And of course I've ended here at Kenwood House because there's a lovely cafe. It would have made more sense, if you do this walk by yourselves, to come to Kenwood first, then go to Parliament Hill rather. Because I went to Parliament Hill first, I had to backtrack on myself and come to Kenwood House. But I thought it would be a fitting end to end with such a grand house, a grand mansion, and a grand view of the lake that I'm going to show you in a few moments. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out Hampstead Heath, or there's so much more that you can discover. And here we have Humphrey Repton to display it in its full force, a terminating scene, the most magnificent that can be conceived. That is landscape as art from Humphrey Repton. I have been Vincent, guys, from Wonders of London. Hope you've enjoyed this. Do have a lovely rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, etc., wherever you are. Bye!